Okay, so let's have a look at this lab where we're going to set up some services and then look at login and then have a look at some of the intrusions that can happen inside our network infrastructure. So the setup that we have is that we have the WAN on EM0, our LAN on EM1, and then our DMZ on EM2. And then we're going to use the 172.16 network. We're going to use, in this case, 99 and 100 and really get the whole thing working. Okay, so the network that I'm going to configure is this one here. And so let's go ahead and see if we can get it set up. Okay, so I've already opened up the consoles for each one. There is the Ubuntu one, and here is our Windows one. Okay, so just to show that it's fresh reset, so I've rebooted it to factory defaults, and then I'll just go ahead and set it up. So that's EM0, this one is EM1, this one is EM2, and that's them all. And then we'll just go ahead. We only need to really configure the LAN interface so that we can actually connect into the firewall. Okay, so we'll configure LAN, and we'll give it an address of 172.16.99.254 for our gateway. It's 24 bits, and then everything's fine there. No DHCP. And that's the setup. Okay, so we have our WAN address here, and then we have our LAN address, and that will allow us to get into the firewall, and then we'll create our DMZ interface in a little minute. Right, so let's put these side by side and let's get things started here. So Ubuntu, I'll do this, just close that. Okay, so the first thing we do is we have a look to see what the interface name is. In this case it's ETH11. So we do sudo ifconfig ETH11 172.16.99.7, and we use a net mask, subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. And the next thing is that we need to set up our default gateway, and that will be 172, whatever we've set up on the firewall, 16.99.254. Okay, so that's already been set up, so we're okay. So we would often have a look at our routing table to be able to see that everything's set up. So that's for anything on our local network gets sent to ETH11, which is fine, and then anything else gets sent to the default gateway, so we're okay. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to be able to set up our name server. So we'll set up this in the resolve.config file. Luckily it's already there, so you would just basically type in the name server here, and we're using a name server of 10.200.0.1 that's the main gateway, and it will resolve our domain names. Okay, so Control X, and that's fine. Okay, so we ping our own port 16.99.7. That's working. We ping the gateway. That's working. Okay, that's great. So everything seems to be okay. So now what we'll do is we'll log into our Firewall, and that's connected. That's great. So it's an HTTPS connection, it doesn't have a certificate, so that's why we get that. And then we just log in. And that's perfect. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just click through and then we'll just go ahead and configure the actual device. So the one's on DHCP, that's good. Just make sure that we uncheck the private networks. I don't know if I'd unchecked that, but we'll go back and check it in a little minute. Okay, so that's us done. Okay, so just let's make sure that we uncheck the block private networks. Everything we're using is a private network, so it's okay to uncheck that option. Okay, so let's apply that. Right, so the first thing we'll do is we'll set up our DMZ interface because it's not, we didn't enable it yet. So we'll go at something a bit better than opt1. And then it's an IPv6 static IP address, and it's 172.16.100.254, and it's a 24-bit subnet mask. And that's it. Okay, so that's given us our very basic setup here. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll configure our Windows machine to be on the DMZ. Okay, so 172.16.100.7, that's right. 116.100.254 is correct, and then that's the name server. So that's all set up perfectly. So what we'll do from here is that we'll actually go ahead and we'll ping this machine, and it's on the 100 network. That's great. So we have connectivity from the LAN to the DMZ. What we'll find, although it's connected, is that we'll find that we can't actually ping the other side, and we can't even ping our own gateway here. And the reason for that is that it's blocked by default. So 172.16.100.199.7. Okay, so we see we can't ping. So what we need to do is to be able to set up a rule that will allow us to be able to get through. So what we'll see is that if we look at our rules, then on the LAN there is an IPv4 rule that allows everything to go through. So no matter if it's ICMP or TCP or UDP, this rule here allows everything to go through. On our DMZ, we don't have anything. Okay, so everything is blocked. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll set up for any protocol to just pass through, just like it does in the LAN, just for testing just now. So there we go. So now when we ping, hopefully, and we need to apply, of course. If we then apply, hopefully, there you go, it comes alive. Okay, so we now have connectivity between the LAN and the DMZ. Okay, so let's do a quick audit of our IP addresses. So we can ipconfig/all, there's the MAC address of the Windows machine, and then if we ping the gateway, which we have, and then do an arp -a, we should be able to see what the MAC address is of the gateway that we've discovered. So that's that one. Same over here. If we've discovered the gateway, so let's just ping it so that we can discover it. 192.16, and then that's 99.254. And then we'll look at our ARP cache. We should be able to see what the MAC address is of the default gateway on the LAN, which is that address there. And then if we want to look at our own MAC address, it's just ifconfig, and there it's there. If we want to find out the MAC address of the WAN connection, then obviously we can look at the ARP cache on the device, on the firewall, and it should show us. Okay, so there is the default gateway, and there is our WAN port there, and that's what the MAC address is. The other addresses that it's discovered are these ones. So that's the DMZ, that's the gateway, that's the host, this one here, and that's its MAC address. There's the host on the LAN here, and then there is the default gateway on the LAN. Okay, so in this way we've actually discovered our network. So let's go ahead and see if we can get full connectivity with all our browsers and things like that. So let's see if we have Google connectivity. I'll go forward with that. Good, we have connectivity there. That's proven that HTTPS is working. And we'll just try the BBC. And that's fine too. Okay, so it's all working now. So one thing was the to set up the name server. So that goes into the /etc/resolve.config is our name server then. Okay, if you have problems with that, with resolving the names, then it's probably to do with it not being set correctly then. Okay, so let's look at our services that we're running, and what we can see is we're running FTP, SSH, SMTP, and so on, and there's the web there, SSH. So then we'll go ahead and we'll connect into the web server from the DMZ into the LAN. That is there. Okay, so that's working okay. And then what we'll do is we'll just capture our network packets so we can actually have a look to see our connections, the network packets. Okay, so we'll just refresh again. So what I need to do is to refresh the cache to make sure it does something. Okay, so there's the packets there. So if we want to look for the start of a connection, we look for the SYN flag. There. So that gives us both SYN and SYNACS. If we just want to look for the SYNs on their own, which is the incoming connection, then it'd be tcp.flags.ac is equal to 0. And there we go. We can then right click and we can actually have a look at the whole stream. So the red shows what we're sending and the blue shows what actually comes back from the connection. Okay, so if we want to have a look at the details of the connection, so we can see what the MAC addresses are. So there's the destination, which would be destination of the gateway. That's our MAC address. These are the IP addresses. That's our IP address. That's the destination IP address. And this is the source port, and this is the destination port. What we'll find is that the MAC address relates to the MAC address of the gateway and not the MAC address of the destination machine, because it's on another network. So we can also look in terms of the HTTP request that we do. So http.request.method, we can have a look at all the different methods. Okay, there's a get, and we can find out when it's a get. The other one that's typical is a post, as we'll see, but in this case we have a get. And then we can also look at the response code. So when we do HTTP, we get a response code coming back, and we should find that 200 is a normal response code that comes back. But 404 is another one that we can see, and that's a page not found. So we can just look for a certain response code if we actually want. So the other debugging that we can use is to be able to use Telnet. So we'll do the same thing. We'll connect to our LAN server, port 80, and then we'll type in options/http/1.1, and here's what we get back. So the options can give us the information about whether it's the type of server it has and the technology it's using and so on. Okay, so let's look at how we can actually create a web page. So we go into the var www folder, and we find there's some web pages in there. So what I'll do is I'll just create a new one, and HTML, and we just go ahead and put in a page here. So we'll just save that, and so that's called build01. So we'll come over here again, and we'll bring up our browser, and we'll just enter this new page. Hopefully it'll pick it up. Okay, so there we go. That's picked up perfectly. Okay, so let's have a look at the log that's actually created. So we would go into the Apache 2 folder, and we see there's a whole lot of logs, and then the most recent one is the access.log. So we'll have a little look in there, and we'll actually find here is the request to that page. There's my IP address, there's the date, there's my HTTP request. It returned a 200. That's the port, and this is the actual HTTP status message. If we now try to access a page that isn't there, okay, we get a 404 error that it's there. And now if we have a look at our log, there is our 404 error there, and this is the detail here of what we tried to access. Now what we'll do is we'll have a look at creating a little form so that we now do a post. So when we're passing parameters into a page, we can do it through the URL. So with the URL, we typically use something like that. And then we have a question mark, variable 1 is equal to 1, and then an ampersand, variable 2 is equal to that. So we pass parameters with a get through this way, but the other way we can do it is through a post, which will post through the HTTP request and not through the URL. So if we look at this one, okay, so we've already got a little page set up there. So this is going to have a button on it, and we're going to post into this page here, the parameters. This page doesn't exist just now, so we'll get a 404 for it. Okay, so that's set up just as index.html. So there we go, there's a little box, and we can submit into them. So if we now look at our log, there we are there. Okay, there's the post, and then there's the 404 coming back from it there. Okay, and there's the requesting machine, and there's the server that we tried to access. So we'll do the same on this side now. What we'll do is that we'll have a look at our netstat, and you should find that we're running web, HTTP in this case, is there. NTP there we go, HTTP. And so we'll do the same again on this side. What we'll do is we'll access 172.16.100.7, and that's perfect. So we can do the same again as we did before. By running Wireshark over here, we can have a look at our connection. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is we'll actually do the same again with our telnet, just to see if this is working. 172.16.100.7, and then it's 80 again. Okay, let's try again. So it's options / HTTP / 1.1. Okay, and there we go. It's actually given us some details then. Okay, so we can do the same again, but on this side we go into the inet pub, we go into www root, and this gives us our home file here, and we can just use Notepad. So we're looking for IIS start. Default.asp is one, and so on. Then we can add in our code in here, create our page. So just go ahead and do that, and then when you access it, then you should get the home web page. So let's look at the logs. So you'll either find them in IIS, the inet pub www root, or in the log folder of inet pub. But in this case, we'll find them in log files here. And then we're looking for W3, and here we are here. So the last log was the EX14522, and there it is there. Okay, so we can actually see, there's the file that was accessed, and there's some of the other content. We have the IP address of the the accessor and the details of the browser or the user agent that actually caused it. Okay, so the same again over here. When we access it, let's access a page not found. 404 error. Let's open the log file up again. Hasn't quite got there yet. But you should find that it will actually log the 404 error in the log. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get our host on our DMZ online and to be able to be accessed from outside. So the first thing we need to do is to run an nmap on our WAN port just to steal an address. So while that's running, let's go ahead and set up our virtual IPs here. So we'll just wait for this to finish. We're going to be using reverse ARP. So let's pick 102 here because it's not being used. 102, and that's going to be our server address for our web server. And we'll just save that. That's fine. And then now we need to set up our one-to-one NAT. So here we go, and we'll set up the external address is 10.200.0.102 and our internal address is 172.16.100.7, and then we'll just save that and apply the changes. So by default, all the traffic will be blocked from the WAN port to the DMZ, so we'll have to open that up on port 80. So from the WAN, TCP, and then from anywhere into the DMZ. We'll just make it the whole subnet that we're allowed access to, but we could lock it down to a single host if we wanted. Okay, so we're now allowing the traffic to come in from the WAN port into the DMZ, nowhere else, so it won't be able to get into the LAN. So right, that's us there. So let's we'll have a log there. So what we'll do is we'll just spin up a host externally, and so just take this one here. If you do Linux VLAN 200, then that gets you on the WAN interface. So just let's see what address that we have here. Okay, that's fine. So we won't be able to ping the host over here, but let's go ahead and access it. So this is sitting on the WAN interface. Okay, so let's do 172.16. Sorry, we want to do 10.200.0.102, and there it is, as if by magic. So let's have a look at our log, and we can see that we have accesses there, and there they are. Okay, so this is us outside the LAN. We're using one-to-one NATing and then there's the internal. So there's the external address. So that's this one here, sitting outside. And that's it accessing here. So that's the address that comes up, and that's the internal address of our server here. Okay, so in this way we've set up our one-to-one NATing, and we've allowed the firewall rule to go through. So the next thing we'll do is we'll have a look at our remote access, just to see what we get. So we run telnet 172.16.99.7. We'll connect to our Ubuntu host. And you can restart the Wireshark. So let's try Napier and this password. There we go. So we do pwd. It can actually show us the present working directory, which is /Napier home. So what I'll do is I'll create a file just to show that it's actually there. And we should see the file over here. So let's make the connection again, and then we'll be able to do our Wireshark trace. Okay, so again we will look for our flags. So it goes 1, and there we are there. And then we can follow the stream, so we should see an Inconnect login here. And we see the little typo there. Okay, so that checks that telnet is working okay. And then we can do it the other way around, and we can telnet into our other machine from here, 172.100.7. Okay, so it doesn't look like our telnet server is actually running over here. That's okay. Let's just have a quick look to see what services we're running. And telnet is running, so we have just a slight problem. We'll just see if we have connectivity. 172.16.100.7. And we've just lost the connection there. So we've just lost our IP address here. So ifconfig sudo ifconfig eth10, and we are on 172.16.99.7 netmask 255.255.250. Let's see, we need to set our default gateway. 16.99.254. Okay, so just look at our root. And that's fine. So let's see if we can ping the other side. Okay, so we'll ping our gateway. That's not right. So just to be sure that we have the right details. 10.7 16.99.7 then 254. Okay, so in this part, what we'll do is we'll expose the telnet server on the DMZ to the outside network. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll just test that we can connect to telnet. Okay, so our telnet server is at 172.16.100.7. Okay, so that looks fine. Oh, sorry, we're connecting to port 80 there. So we'll try and connect to port 23. That's fine, so we'll just try administrator. Okay, that's great. So the default home folder is documents administrator. We'll just create a file. And then we'll just go over here. And so that's in okay, and there's the file we just created through telnet. Okay, so we just exit. So again, what we'll do is we'll open up a machine that's on the WAN network, and then hopefully we'll be able to connect into the server, telnet server on the one-to-one mapping that we've made. Ten dot 200.0.102. Okay, so the reason for that is that we obviously need to open up the firewall. Okay, so let's look at our rules. And what we can see is that we've opened up port 80, but we haven't opened up port 23. So that's what we'll do. Okay, so we're going to allow in anything going to telnet. To the DMZ. So that's allowing all the machines on the DMZ to be contacted by telnet. Okay, so we just check. So we have 23 in there. So now let's try that again. Not there yet. So we just check what our IP address is. Oh. So it doesn't have the right IP address. So what we'll do is that we'll just update its address. Just to make it sure it's on the WAN network. Okay, so let's get a new lease. And that's fine. So now let's try again. And it works. Okay, so through one-to-one NAT, we've managed to be able to contact our telnet server. So what we'll do is we'll just make sure that that's working. So there, and I'll just list 2. So we'll go over here just to prove that we're behind that. There we go. And when we look, there is list 2. Okay, So that shows that that's actually working now, and we've managed to be able to expose our telnet server to the outside. So the next thing we're going to do is to be able to remote desktop into the into our LAN. So what to do is to run Wireshark, and then hopefully you should be able to remote desktop, and what you'll find is that the information that's sent is unencrypted. Okay, so let's get the address right. 172.16.99.7. There we go. So if we allow, there we go. Okay, so we have our remote desktop working. And then we'll just disconnect. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the FTP service. So from here, we'll have a look to see if the FTP service is running on the LAN network 16.99.7. Okay, so there isn't any files in there just now, but we could drag files in if we needed to. And then we'll actually create a telnet connection. 16.99.7 on port 21. And then we type user and Napier. And password. Okay, so that's us in. So then we can type help. It's one of the FTP commands. pwd shows us what our present working directory is, and if we want ASCII or binary, we can type that. And then what we do is that we type in passive. So passive FTP opens up a port on the server which we then connect to. So if we type passive, then the last two digits tell us which port that we need to connect to. So if we very quickly calculate that, then it's actually equal to 243 times 256 plus 160. So the port that we must connect to is that one. So what we do is we open up another command line prompt and we connect in to 172.16. .99.7 on port 62368. Okay, so we now do a list, and we're going to connect in 62368, and there you go. Okay, I hope you could see that what happens with FTP is that a port is opened up over here, and then we create another telnet session and connect into it and get the listing. The two numbers that we look for are actually here, and so the port 21 is really just used for the commands, but the actual data that's transferred is actually transferred through these passive ports, which are actually set up on the server. And the reason that we've got to do this, the firewall will open up. So you see the firewall will allow this to go through because it actually watches the communication that comes back and opens up the port to be able to connect, to be able to be connected into. Okay, so in the next part, what to do is to have a look at the Hydra. So we'll just quit from here. Quit is the command to get out, and we can try our Hydra. Attack. So you should find there's a user file, and we'll just have a look at that one. So administrator, so we'll just have a look, and Napier is in there, and we'll have a look at our pass file, and we have Napier 123. So when we run Hydra, -L for a user file, -P for the password file, and then we're running against 172.16.99.7, and it's the FTP protocol. So we'll just fire up Wireshark just so that we can actually have a look to see what the trace is. Okay, so let's go. There you go, it's found it already. Napier and Napier 123. And that's finished. Okay, so if we do an FTP response code equal to 530, there is our incorrect login. So you can see if we followed that stream, then we should be able to see what the login details actually were that were incorrect. Okay, so there's the attempt there. If we try for a 230, there we go. So response code 230 shows us when it was successful, and there it's there. Okay, so we can look at a response code and it'll give us details of when the attack has been successful. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up our syslog server, and then from the firewall we're going to actually send details from the firewall to the syslog server on various events that actually happen. So if we go to status, system logs, settings, just scroll down, and we're going to send to the machine in the DMZ 16.100.7, and we may as well just send everything there. I'll just save that. So that's going to send it to here. So already, hopefully, we should be able to see that there are some messages coming through, and there are. Okay, so what we'll do is that, okay, so already we're getting messages coming through. So what we'll do is we'll disable the firewall rules, such as this one. So we're going to disable that one. Just toggle it off. Okay, so that's blocking. Oops, so that's the wrong one. Let's do it for the LAN. Let's re-enable that one. And we'll do it for the LAN. And we're going to block all IP traffic. And then hopefully, when we try to connect, let's try and ping the gateway port. .99.254. There we go. So we get a rule that actually says that we've breached one of the rules on the firewall. So you can see here there was a match on EM1, which is the LAN port. Okay, so in this way we can keep track of exceptions that happen, firewall rules that get hit, and so on our syslog server. So what we'll do is we'll just go back and we'll re-enable that rule, and we shouldn't have a problem anymore. Okay, so there's a interesting tool called WMIC, which is a quite useful tool in gathering information either from a host or from the whole network, from all the Windows machines. So if we use WMIC, this is CPU listings. We can actually see what CPU is running. Especially we can look at the shares that are on a machine, because that can cause problems on the network. Okay, so you can see the shares that we have here. Okay, and we can also do that onto another network if we want. So as our last little exercise, let's actually set up our IDS system.